Hey folks, Coach Patrick here from Marathon Nation, home of the Smarter, Faster Runner, back with another weekly podcast where I answer your questions and give you some insights on how to, effectively train and race to be your best as a runner. These are questions that anyone can submit, and I encourage you to do so over on our website at marathonnation.us. And before I dive into this week's question, I also want to point out we've just published a whole suite of resources for you which you can register for and get for free, totally free. Over 11 books, plans, seminars, and so on for you to check out. You can find that again over at marathonnation.us. All right, so on to this week's question. We had a great question this week from, let me give a shout out, Scott Willis, who recently raced and PR'd his marathon, which is awesome. Congratulations. And he asked specifically, how do you train for the last 5 miles? In the last 5 miles, he slowed down by about 30 seconds per mile. And while he PR'd, he still missed his target. The conundrum of the last 5 miles in a race day on a marathon is really, really hard to solve, Scott, because there's lots of different factors that can come into play for slowing down. The first and foremost thing that I think about is pacing. A lot of times people simply start off a little too aggressively. 5 or 6 seconds early on in the race in the first 5 or 6 miles is free, it seems. It's easy. But the snowball effect later in your race grows tremendously. So I would certainly go back and look at your pacing, particularly in the case of a marathon, look at the first 8 miles and see how well you pace those. The majority of people start off too fast and they suffer downstream. In other words, your long training runs, let's say you were going to run 8-minute miles on race day, that was your target, make it up. In the first couple miles you ran some 7:50s in there because it was free and easy, but by the end you're running 8:30s and you're hurting, okay? So I would go back and say, well, in your training runs, you probably didn't start off the first 8 miles at 7:50s before you settled into your pace. More often than not, we take a mile or two to kind of warm up and we ease into our pace, okay? And so you almost have to look at that as a tool for pacing yourself. If you have more questions about pacing, we've got those resources. They're free, just like I mentioned, on the Marathon Nation website at marathonnation.us. So when you think about what it means to be better at the end of your race, number one, pacing. Number two, I would look at nutrition. If you did pace correctly and you're confident about how well you handled the pacing both in your training and on race day, then the next thing that I would look at is your nutrition. Were you fueling enough? A lot of times people will simply run out of fuel at the end of those runs. Most of us don't run beyond 21 miles in training, which is fine. There's lots of reasons why we don't do that. It's just in terms of being detrimental to our health and our ability to continually train throughout the course of the week. Since you're not going to run beyond 21 miles, it doesn't mean you can't avoid being fueled for those last 21 miles. And what people don't necessarily take into account is that when they do a long run at home or what have you, they're not replicating the stress of race day. They're not replicating what it's like to have aid stations. And most people will eat very close to when they run. You might get up at 6:30 on a Saturday and eat a hearty breakfast and run at 7:30 and you're great. Well, on race day, you've got to drop off your bag, you got to leave your hotel, blah, blah, blah. You're eating 2.5, 3 hours before. And the net is you're not getting in great food just before the run like you always did in training. So I encourage people to really map out their nutrition at the start of the race to make sure that they're really good, both their breakfast, what they're doing just before the run, and then on the course of the run itself. And more often than not, if you find yourself not being able to sustain your pace at the end of the run, I would definitely look at your fueling. As a general guideline, I look at something like a gel. For Power Bar products, they've got great sodium in them and very digestible. And I would look at, in general, I tell people you probably want one of those roughly every 45 minutes, give or take. Maybe more often if you're running faster, maybe less often if you're running on the slower side. I'd say above or below like a 10-minute mile. And the harder you're running, if you're trying to break 3 hours, so you're running really fast for a human being, then yeah, you probably need food on a faster cycle versus someone who's later. And also body composition, everything comes into play. But at the very least, I'd be looking at that. If you didn't really eat anything or you just kind of took in what was on the course, that may have set you up for some failure there as well. And then finally, from a training perspective, the third and final part of my answer to you, Scott, who knew this could be so complicated, will be your training itself. If you're finding that in your long runs or on race day that no matter what you do, you seem to be kind of tapering off with your effort in those last 5 miles, I would specifically construct long runs for you in the last 8 weeks of your training cycle to have hard work at the end of your run. Almost negative splitting every run. Negative splitting, which just basically means running the second half of your run faster than the first, is a great tool for mental focus and also for preparation in terms of what you want to do on race day. Because even though you won't go faster per se in the second half of your marathon than you did in the first half, it will be significantly harder mentally and physically at that point in time, which is similar to what it is like to run faster. In other words, your body's ability to run faster diminishes greatly beyond like the 2 hour and 40-minute mark, but the pain it goes up and the cost of running goes up, and that increased pain and cost of running is similar to running faster. So you could do something like take a 90-minute run and do the last half hour, say at a pace that's, say if you're training for 8-minute miles, maybe 15 to 20 seconds faster per mile than your target pace, which is generally pretty solid for people. So those are the three things that I would look at for you: execution, nutrition, and then negative split in the run. Okay, Scott, thank you so much for submitting your question. Anyone else who wants to submit a running question can do so over on the MarathonNation.us website. There's information via our newsletter on how to send things in to me, and I will answer them here for you in our podcast and video cast for you. As always, this is Coach Patrick from Marathon Nation, home of the Faster, Smarter Runner. Please, please, please go ahead and check out our website, download our free resources. Would love to get your input and feedback on how we can do a better job of serving you guys out there. All right? Be great out there. Have fun. Enjoy your run today. I'll see you guys online.